Hello everyone! Welcome to the September virtual mini art. Today we're going to paint a mini starry night. So I'm basing mine on Van Gogh's Starry Night, as you can see. So you can use one of the photos of the masterpiece to use as your reference photo as you work if you wish. If you have any questions as you start painting, please either post your question below the video or send me an email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can to answer those questions. Have fun, everyone! Alright, so let's get started by going through our supplies. So as you can see, I pre-treated your canvas. I made the background closer to the original color that was in the background on Van Gogh's Starry Night. And that was done with a beige kind of a color. It was called Warm Buff, if you're interested in knowing exactly what that was. I pretty much used this small detail brush for the whole painting. There's a lot of line work in here, and something small works very well to get that effect. I've got my paints in here today instead of my usual paper plate. I've got my cobalt hue, blue bonnet, I have summer sky, cloudless, white, black, I've got Christmas green, nutmeg brown, sunny day, harvest orange, and let's see, I think this one is my blue. It's a dark blue gray color in this one, and you only need very tiny bit of that. As always, feel free to use any of the paints you already have at home that you'd like. You basically just need lots of blues, and then you want some yellow to contrast against the blue so your stars pop. Alright, you'll also need, as usual, you'll want some water, some paper towels, that way when you rinse your brushes, you can dry your brushes right off, and of course a pencil. Alright, so let's get started. I'm not going to draw too much detail. We are mostly going to get our outline, just so we know where different pieces where we want different pieces to go. And we will make sure that we get our stars placed and our moon placed. Alright, so first, I'm going to start from this side here. I'm just going to kind of get my horizon line. So I want to know where the sky ends and the land begins. So something like that works. Before I go too much further, I'm going to put my cypress tree in there. And that goes almost up to the top. So I'm drawing this in sections. It's very flowy, so you can, it's forgiving. So just kind of get some flowy shapes going. There we go. So as you can see, I mean, this is, it looks kind of messy, but it's a good guideline. Okay. And I want to add one more piece right here. Okay. All right. So I know where I want my tree to go. I'm also going to put my moon, so that's another important piece. So I'm just drawing my inner sea first for the moon shape. There we go. Then I draw the outer, and that works. I'm going to put my swirl in here. This is kind of a recognizable shape here. That's kind of what makes the swirl in the sky really memorable. Let's start from this side. So it's kind of that middle section of the sky. Then we've got this loop here. Okay. So as you can see, I mean, my canvas, very sketched up. Once we put the paint on there, a lot of these lines will kind of disappear. And it'll be really a nice smooth image. Okay. All right. So I'm just taking a look, making sure I got my swirl the way I'd like it. I've got another swirl happening here. Okay. All right. I'm going to move down a little bit into my landscape. So where my horizon line is, there are a couple of different layers. So what I mean by that is we've got this strip here. We've got this little strip. Then we have this, and then we sort of have the bottom. So I'm going to say this one's my highest one. I'm going to make one that's lower. There we go. Sort of thinking hills. There we go. Okay, so I made my second one. My third section is here. Just going to go like that. There we go. Okay, before I get into any of this down here, I want to put my steeple, my church with the steeple coming right up to the sky. I'm going to get that steeple in there first. And then I'm going to get my roof in there. I'm not too worried about the detail at this point. I am more concerned with just the placement of a lot of these things. Okay, there we are. Now, I'm just going to put a couple of these rooftops in here. Just get a little bit of that structure, those structures right in the bottom here. And then I'm going to leave this area somewhat open. I'll put a couple of these details in here, but for the most part, the painting is when I'm going to go more into detail. And what's nice is you can just kind of replicate the same shapes here. Because each house has a basic kind of a look for the roof. Okay, all right. So I'm going to leave it like this. This works for me. Just so I don't get confused, I'm going to draw some of these lines. That way I can remember what design I had in mind when I drew that. And then here, I've got some smaller humps. Okay, so I'm just going to do just about that much. Put a couple down here. I don't want to spend much time drawing those in because as I get painting, I can finish up that way. I just want to make a little reminder for myself by doing this as to what is going here. Okay, all All right, so it doesn't look too much like anything right now, but we're gonna go ahead and get started in just 1 second. Just wanna put the stars in there. There is significance as to how many stars are on here, so I try to put them exactly where they were placed and make sure I don't miss one. So we've got one here, and what I like to do is kind of make a dotted circle around my star. This way I remember the middle part is the star, and this is about how wide I want the rays to go. I may as well do that with my moon too. This will be helpful as we start painting the sky to kind of know which direction we want the strokes to go in. Okay. There we go. It's a little smaller, a little bigger. And there are a variety of sizes in here. And you want to make sure you get these ones. I always tend to miss the ones that are kind of in the middle. Okay, there we go. And there's one kind of right behind this tree. I'm gonna place it right about here. Okay. There we go. Okay, all right, I'm just going to double check how many stars I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, want to make sure I got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I might have missed one. Okay, good thing I checked. And I did. I missed the one that was right up here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and start in with our painting. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to get started with the sky, but then we're going to jump around a little bit because there are portions here that we want to dry before we get too involved here. Like, for example, when we're putting our yellows and blues close to each other, we want to be careful that we don't create any green happening here. So we want to kind of wait between steps. Okay. I'm going to get started with my cobalt. So that's the darkest blue that you've got here. And we're going to start right at the top. Okay. Now, you want to create movement here with your stroke. So what you want to do is you want to start on the left-hand side and you want to work your way over to the right. And you can especially see the movement here. So you want everything to go in the same direction to sort of give this sky a lot of movement. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, bear in mind, the smaller your strokes, the longer this is going to take. Strokes that are about this big tend to work for me. So these are about 1/2 inch long strokes. They're not super thin, so just a small brush here. Like, this is the thinnest brush that I have in like a pack set. So something like this will do the job. And if you use one that's a little bit bigger, it'll take even less time. And what I'm doing is I'm going right up to the periphery of that star. All right? I don't want to get into it, but I want to be close. There we go. So I'm leaving space because I'm going to fill it in with another blue. but also you want a little bit of that brown to show through. Kind of gives it a little bit more of the look that was similar to the original. So if you look closely at the original, you can see a little bit of brown coming through it. So I just like to add that touch. And definitely if you find that this is quite relaxing and you enjoy it, there have been times where I've done this painting and I have wanted to spend a lot of time putting my sky together. So feel free to do that if you want to. I'm going to try to keep this as close to an hour as I can, but definitely continue working on it for longer if you want to. It's also a good project to do periodically. Like, you don't have to do the whole thing all in one sitting. You won't really lose your momentum too much if you break it up, because it's such a repetitive design. It actually is kind of fun to leave it for a while and come back to it. So as you can see, I'm trying to get it in all of these little spaces. And a mistake I've made is spacing these too much. So you definitely want them close. What's good too is because there's the background paint on here, you might notice your colors go on a little bit more opaque than they do sometimes. That's because we've got this solid base here. So you won't need to double up on your coats on this. One coat ought to do the trick. And don't worry too much about going inside the lines of your tree. That's totally fine. As long as you can see where your tree is supposed to go, that's the most important thing. You can sort of see how I'm doing this, like in little, I'm grouping these together. That seems to help give it movement by moving like up and down throughout that section, rather than taking a small amount across and going in almost like rows. You can go right up to the edge of your canvas. And now, when you reach about that halfway point, just make sure you can see the direction that it's going, and make sure it looks like you can see the movement. Because if you can't, you'll just want to make a couple adjustments to make sure that you can. The way you would do that would be to go back in and just make a few strokes throughout, all going in the same direction, and that'll increase the movement. We are still on our first color though, so don't worry if you're not loving it right now. There's still a lot to add to it. And it's usually about this point that I notice my strokes start to look a little different than the ones right at the beginning. For example, they're getting longer and a little squished. So you want to try to maintain the look that you started with. So you just want to check in. Just take a look. Do your best. Okay. This is a good project to put some nice instrumental music on while you work. Never fails. I've painted this many times, many variations, and each time it's quite meditative, and it's very relaxing, and it never gets old. I love making different versions of this. So as you can see right here, we've got like a convergence happening here with the different brush directions. So just kind of do your best. You want to show that we have movement happening, but then right around here, like perhaps it swings upward, kind of to match nicely with what we have going on here with the moon. I can tell that I've pushed my brush harder against the canvas as I moved in this direction. All right, let's see. Okay, so this is the part where I always need to take a better look at my my reference photo, because technically in this area, that top section of the sky is connected to this bottom section, right? So what I'm going to do is, for the most part, I'm going to get this top part done. I've kind of started to come downwards a little bit, but I'm still keeping my lines going. Now it is up to you if you want to move your strokes in this direction. That is totally fine. Or you can pause, start over here one more time, and move in that direction. So that's what I'm going to do. I paused right there. I'm going to just take a look, make sure I understand what I've drawn, where I need to put my strokes. So I can see this section here, this middle piece is right here. So I'm going to draw right here. Right in here, I've got my tree, and I've got this little section of sky here. So it's not a huge section. But before you start painting, you want to make sure that you're sure about where you're putting things. And again, feel free to overlap into that tree a little. Okay, so we've got that, we've got the tree, and then somewhere right around here is where we might draw a little stray branch. I'm gonna go ahead and fill in a little bit right here. It's not much. Okay, so you can sort of see I've got a star in here, got branches in here. And then same thing with the steeple as with the tree. Feel free to overlap a little bit. Just make sure it doesn't get lost. Okay, there we go. All right. This is a very solid start. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we are going to let this dry a little bit and we're going to move into these sections here. Okay? So we're going to get our blue bonnet color ready. And you want to use the pure color. So in other words, make sure your brush is nice and rinsed, nice and dry. Sometimes I just end up touching all the different paints without rinsing my brush. But for this painting, you'll want a clean brush whenever you switch colors. Okay. All right, so I've got my blue bonnet. So that one is going to be the next, after this cobalt hue, it's going to be the other darker blue, but it's still pretty light. Now I'm going to start from over here. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to fill in these swirls that I hadn't filled in yet. And then with the same color, we're going to begin in our stars. Now, first thing I'm going to do is fill in this swirl, and then I'll jump back into the stars. Even though I'm coming in contact with the stars, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do much with that right now. Okay, went right up to the edge, and you want to make sure your swirl is making sense. So we can see it comes over here. Looks like this little spot here, right between some branches, is part of our light blue. So take a look, make sure you like what you're seeing and you like the direction that it's going in. Okay. Now we're going to fill this one in. I find that it's easiest to start at this point and move in this direction. And that's okay if your colors kind of start to touch. All right, so as we get into this loop, it can start to be a little twisty. So I am just going around in kind of a circular motion in that section. But as you can see, these sort of blend the way that we've got it. So what I am going to do, so that I don't get mixed up, is I am going to go ahead and get a little bit of my Cobalt. And you might not need to do this, so take a look at yours and see if it would be something helpful for you. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of this, and right here, right where this ends, I'm just going to make one line of these little dashes right here, connecting this point to this point. So I'll show you what I mean, and that will make it easier for you to follow what your design is. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so you just break it up just a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, so the next thing we'll do is we're going to keep using this blue bonnet. Before we start with our stars, we are going to jump into that dark blue background. And you're going to start filling in some of these spaces, okay? So we're going to fill this in pretty thoroughly. You want to leave a little bit of space though, so that we can add in a handful of that dark blue gray color. All right. The way I usually do this is I just look for every space that I see, and then I skip one every now and then. So you can, this part I find to be a little quicker than the first round that you did. And you want to make sure you go right up to the edge of that other section of sky. So once you add this in, it's going to start to blend together. So you want to make sure you can still tell which section is which. So you don't want to go like too fast. It's easy to start going very quickly and then accidentally paint over your strokes. You want to try to put them beside the ones you have instead of on top of. Okay, there we go. And once again, I'm just going right up to my stars rather. I'm not painting them in yet. As you can probably imagine, this is the part that takes the longest in this painting. So we're definitely spending the majority of our time in the sky. And then the bottom half of the painting comes together much more quickly. So I'm just going right into that little spot there, but I'm not following it all the way. Okay, so you're coming right upon the same situation we had the first time. So here you can either take it, swing it around, continue that way, or you can start again from this side and move your way this way. What I recommend is doing it the same way the whole time. So if you kept it going last time, keep on doing that with this stroke. But if not, if you started back over here, that's what I would do. Okay. All right, so you can still see some of the brown coming through. You don't want to cover all of that. Let a little bit kind of peek out from behind. Okay, and there we are. All right, so what we're going to do now is, now that we've got our sky in very nice shape, we are going to use this blue to start creating the light coming from the stars and the moon. So I'm going to start with the moon first. What I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make the same types of dashes, but I'm going to do it in a circular motion. So I'm starting from the outside and trying to give it as symmetrical a shape as I can. There we go. And I'm just going to go around, and I like going in different directions. Like I might go counterclockwise and then switch to clockwise around in my circle. I like the effect that gives more so than if I were to go in the same direction the whole time. Okay, so you want to go right up to the moon, right up to the edge. Okay. Just made a couple of lines in the center because I'd like to use most of my color in here. I want to be the lightest blue and yellow. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And you're going to do the same thing with each of your stars. I recommend, again, starting on the outside and just moving in closer to the star. So you're only going to really put a couple of strokes around some of those stars, because you want to make sure that you don't go over the middle part of the star. Right, you want to still see that clearly. But this will help define the area that you want to paint your light into. There we are. Okay, now I'm just going to double check that none of my stars were covered by mistake. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so you want to make sure you still have 11 plus the moon. Okay, all right, so once we do that, we are going to move on to our summer sky. So that one is our lightest blue. So we also have sort of this bluish green color, Key West, I think. Oh, excuse me, actually that's Cloudless. Pardon me, Cloudless is the greenish one. And we want Summer Sky, which is the blue one, bluish white. Okay. Give that brush a good rinse and definitely dry it off well. If any water drips down your brush, it can sort of make a blob. And after all this hard work, I don't think you'll want that. All right, so we are going to keep going with our dashes. All right, so we're gonna go into that swirly center and we're gonna do what we did in this dark blue area. We're gonna go in between, but we're gonna leave a little bit of space because we wanna put a couple of white strokes. So fill most of the space in and every now and then leave one blank. And go right up to the stars. I'm going to recommend that you do the star part after. So first let's fill this in. Okay. And always good to just check, make sure you understand the flow of what you're doing. It's so easy to get tangled up in this painting. And again, I am doing like a 1 hour rather swift version, or trying to keep it as close to an hour as I can. But I do encourage you to spend more time with this project if you're enjoying it, and add a little more detail and more carefully place your strokes. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking a look. I want to make sure my swirl is defined enough. So I am going to put a little extra of this light color right around the edge because I just want it to pop more. It's almost on top of the previous section, meaning it's overlapping some of those dark colors. Okay. There we go. Okay, happy with that. So I'm going to go into this section, this smaller one in the middle. Again, I'm going to start over here. doing the same thing in here, just kind of defining it a little further by going around the perimeter. Okay, there we go. All right, before we rinse, we are going to use some of this light blue, and we're going to put a little bit in here. So I'm doing the moon first. I'm going to start right on the outside because I don't necessarily want this to be too filled with the blue. I want to leave plenty of room to put yellow in there. So I'm not closing up too much of space in this one. I'm leaving more open than I did when I was doing just the sky. Okay, and as you move towards the center, leave more open spaces, because you want to fill it in with more yellow. More yellow than blue. Okay. Okay. So there's not too much happening there. It's pretty open still. And you're going to do that with your stars as well. Now, because the stars are small, just do it on the outside. So like that, you don't want to get it right in the center, okay? You want to just get a little bit on the outside, not too close to the center. Just kind of go ahead and define those again. So as you can see, when you add that lighter color, they are popping forth. Okay, so just a little something. I'm just going to count mine again just to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, came out 11 again. All right, it's very easy for stars to get lost. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is let this dry a little bit, because the next color we'll add to the sky will be yellow and will be orange. So we don't want to mix that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump down and work on the land part while we let the sky dry a little bit.